Namaskar. Welcome to this session. We are considering the dharana, Dhyana, dharana, Sadhana, that is the Antranga of Ashtanga Yoga. And in the last session we understood that the process from Sthula Pratyahara to Samadhi is a continuous process, uninterrupted process. Any interruption, obstruction entails the commencement right from Sthula Pranayama. So, it is important to note that these are all transformations. Sthula Pranayama transformed into Sukshma Pranayama, then Sukshma Pranayama transforms into the stages that we saw, the Pranavavalambanam, and then the sublimation of the Chitta, and then Pratyahara of the Chitta, and then appearance of dharana, and then appearance of Dhyana, and appearance of Samadhi. So these are all processes with a continuity, without interruptions. They are a flow. So from gross pranayama to Samadhi, it's a flow. So as a student of the subject, one should understand this aspect. And the journey continues, and for dharana, dhyana, samadhi to ensue, it all depends upon samskaras, Nirodha Samskaras. How much one has accumulated Nirodha Samskaras. And it is with dearth of Nirodha Samskaras that the practices terminate at pranayama or at pratyahara and do not get into dharana, dhyana, samadhi. And when the chitta is sublimated, chitta is nirvishaya, objectless, contentless. That means it is to be understood that as a layman thinks that the yogi decides on some dharana and embarks upon that dharana and gets the dharana is not true. The object of dharana appears like dream objects appear in the mind. We do not decide on dreams. We can have dreams, but we cannot decide on dreams as to what dreams should come to us in sleep. So similarly, if you recall, when we considered the Swapna Avastha in the Swapna Vritti, the Nidra Vritti in earlier part of the Samadhi Pada, that the allegorical dreams and particular class of dreams are given by divinity. The other classes of divinity depends upon our obsessions, our passions, our fears, our worries, our expectations, our aspirations. So there are several kinds of dreams. You should recall that discussion that we had during Nidra Vritti discussing the Swapna. But there is a kind of dream which is Drushtanta, and that is given by divinity, and that too was discussed by us while we are dealing with the Swapna in Nidra Vritti. Similarly, here the object of dharana appears in the mind in the Aumified Chitta. From Om, the object fades in, on which the yogi gets dharana, and then it escalates to Dhyana and Samadhi. Basically, the mind has to become objectless, contentless, transfigured, transmuted, transcendent, sublimated, the Pavitrikaranam, the sanctified mind, sanctified Chitta, and in sanctified Chitta the dharana object would appear and dharana would take place by way of Desha bandha. So point is that it is a continuous process, uninterrupted, unobstructed. And then I recall many of the texts of yoga have described pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, samadhi in a table form. So suppose the pranayama, which is Puraka, kumbhaka, rechaka, kumbhaka, Puraka, that's the cycle of pranayama. Now, if that is the cycle of pranayama of a yogi, that means it is essential pranayama, not the pranayama, the kind that we are getting, we do get, and to which we call as pranayama. That's not the pranayama that is referred to, but a yogi's pranayama, where there is Puraka, kumbhaka, rechaka, kumbhaka cycle. And then the Shastra tells us, in order to understand this, the continuum factor here, it is said that if one pranayama, say hypothetically takes 1 minute, which is comprising of Purak, Kumbhak, Rechak, Kumbhak, Purak, Kumbhak, Rechak, Kumbhak, Purak, Kumbhak, Rechak, Kumbhak. So if it is taking, say hypothetically 1 minute, then you should know that pranayama is not of one cycle, there must be multiple cycles. Then only it gets pranayama. So if such pranayama of 12 cycles, which takes about hypothetically 12 minutes here in our example, the Pratyahara lakshana, definition, characteristic should last for 12 into 12 minutes. That is 144 minutes. And what is the Pratyahara lakshana, characteristic, definition? Swa vishaya asamprayoge chitta swarupanukara vai indriyanam pratyahara. Now this characteristic of pratyahara cannot be there for a second or a couple of seconds or tenths of seconds or a minute. It doesn't get qualified as pratyahara unless and until it has continued for 12 into 12 minutes, that is 144 minutes in our hypothetical position. So when the definition of pratyahara is manifesting, it doesn't become pratyahara. It must last for that duration, which is 12 into 12 minutes. So that is 144 minutes in our hypothetical example. Now if dharana has to be there and the dharana has to appear, dharana will not be just by the definition surfacing in the chitta, Desa, bandha, Chittasya Dharna, but that must last for 144 minutes into 12 minutes. That means 1728 minutes. That's about, in our hypothetical example, 28.8 hours. So when the dharana definition continues to be there in the chitta for nearly 28 hours in our hypothetical example, then it would be dharana. It won't be of a second or two. It won't be of a minute or two. So it doesn't happen that merely by definition it would happen, but there is that duration mentioned in the table. So 144 into 12 minutes would be a duration of 28.8 hours. That would be dharana. Now if it has to be dhyana, which is Tatar Pratyaeka Taanata Dhyanam, then that condition should persist in the chitta for 1788 minutes into 12 minutes. So that is approximately 14.4 days. And then for Samadhi, another multiplication of 12. So you can understand, it is not merely by definition Pratyahara happens or dharana happens or dhyana happens or even pranayama happens. Pranayama cannot be of a cycle or two. So the table also gives a kind of clue to us that pranayama transforms into pratyahara, pratyahara transforms into dharana, dharana transforms into dhyana, and dhyana transforms into samadhi. So that is what is the concept of dharana, dhyana, samadhi in classical opinion, in classical tradition. So that also tells us that there is a continuum and continuity from pranayam to pratyahara to dharana to dhyana to samadhi. Now the samadhi objects are vitarkanugata, vicharanugata, anandanugata, asmitanugata, as described by Patanjali in the first chapter. So, couple of points to be noted, that there is no aspect of concentration in Ashtanga Yoga Dharana, nor there is absorption called meditation gets mentioned in Patanjali's scheme of things, nor trance. So that is why one should recall the mysticism described in earlier part of the Samadhi Pada when we were discussing Samapatti. Anyway, we come to the Dharana Sutra, which is 3.1, Desa bandha Chittasya Dharna. The chitta getting confined to Desa, a particular region in the embodiment, that is dharana. And then to have Pratyeka Taanata there itself, in the same locus. In the same locus when there is Tailadharavat Vritti, which is called Pratyeka Taanata, Eka Taanata, continuous flow of that cognition, then that becomes Dhyana. And there itself, there must be Arthamata Nirbhasa and then Swarupa Shunyatvam, that would be Samadhi. So these are 3.1, 3.2 and 3.3 sutras of the Vibhuti Pada. So first of those is the phase of Dharana. So we should understand this dharana is for you and me, it is dhyana. Yogi is in dhyana. Dharana itself is also dhyana, samadhi itself is also dhyana. So when the dhyana is of a smaller magnitude, a minimum prescribed magnitude, it is dharana. When that magnitude increases substantially, then it becomes dhyana. And the same magnitudes when further escalates more and more substantially, that itself becomes Samadhi. So when the yogi is in Samadhi, he is in Dhyana. When the yogi is in Dhyana, he is in Dhyana. When the yogi is in dharana, he is in Dhyana. So our popular term of Dhyana should be understood like that. Dhyana as a unit is dharana, and maybe hypothetically Dhyana square is the second of the Antranga Sadhana, the seventh limb of Ashtanga Yoga, that what is called as Dhyana. And then Dhyana of the dharana raised to 4 would be Dhyana of Samadhi. So if you want to have depiction of a diagram, draw a smaller circle and then mention that dharana circle, that circle as Dhyana in it, and point it out that it is dharana. Draw a circle twice that size and again mention Dhyana in it, and then point it out as Dhyana of the seventh limb of yoga. Again draw a further larger circle and mention Dhyana in it, and then point it out as Samadhi. So basically dharana is Dhyana, Dhyana is Dhyana, Samadhi is Dhyana in non-technical terms. But in technical terms they get called as dharana and then Dhyana and then Samadhi. So dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi is always on something metaphysical. Metaphysical principle, metaphysical aspect, metaphysical objects, metaphysical supports. So in the tradition of yoga, we get to the mention of pancha dharana, 5 kinds of dharanas which are of 5 tattvas, namely Prithvi, Ap, Tej, Vayu, Akash. So they are called technically Bhu dharana, Vari dharana, Vaishwanari dharana, Vayaviya dharana, Nabho dharana. Bhu means element of earth, Vari means Vayu, Vaishwanari means Agni, Vayaviya means Vayu, and Nabho dharana means Akasha. So these are the pancha dharanas respectively on Prithvi, Ap, Tej, Vayu, Akash principles, tattvas. So the Prithvi dharana is called Bhu dharana, and the adibhautik aspect of it is the Prithvi. The Abhyantar sthanam, the location for Prithvi dhyana is Hrudayam, and Bija mantram is Lam, and the Varna, the color of it is yellow. The Adidaivik Devata is Brahma, and its form, mysterious form, is a square, yellow square. So this is what the tantric texts describe. Then coming to Vari dharana, which is on the Ap tattva. The Adibhautik tattva is up, element of water. Abhyantar sthanam, the location with Desa, is Mukham, that is mouth. The Bijam is Vam. The Varnam, the color is Shweta, that is white. Adidaivik Devata is Vishnu, and its form, mysterious form, is crescent moon, white crescent moon. The third dharana is Vaishwanari dharana, which is Agni dharana. Adibhautik principle is Teja tattva, and its Desha is the Talu, that is root of the tongue, and its Bija mantra is Ram. Then its varna, the color is lohitam, that is red. The devata is Rudra, and its mysterious form is triangle. So it is red triangle. The fourth, the dharana, is Vayaviya dharana, and the adhibhotik principle is Vayu, and its abhyantara sthana, which is adhyatmic sthana, is Murdna, that is the crown of the head. And its bija mantram is Vam, its color is Krishna, its adhidaivik deity is Ishvara, not the Ishvara that Patanjali has described. Ishvara is a form of Shankara, Shiva, and its mysterious form is circle, so it is black circle, that is Vayu. Nabho dharana is the fifth one. Adhibhautik support is Akasha Tattva. Abhyantar Adhyatmic location is Brahmarandhra. Bija mantram is Ham, and it is colorless. The devata is Sada Shiva, that is Adidaivik, and its form is non-form. So these are the pancha dharanas which get mentioned in the yogic texts, which are given by the tantras. So in Hatha yogic texts, you get the mention of these classifications. So, as I said just now, that they are all dhyana. For a common man, dharana is dhyana, dhyana is dhyana, samadhi is dhyana. So, when dhyana is dhyana, dharana is called kanishtha dhyana, inferior dhyana. And then samadhi is called shresthatama dhyana, that is superior most dhyana. So these are the mentions you get in Upanishads. They also mention all the three as dhyana: inferior dhyana, normal dhyana, and supreme dhyana. So inferior dhyana is dharana technically, then the dhyana, and then superior dhyana is samadhi technically. In Shandilya Upanishad, you get mention of Saguna Nirguna Dhyana, two types of dhyana. The Saguna is on the Deva Pratima, Devata Pratima, the image of deities, and Nirguna Dhyana is Atma Dhyana. So it is akin to Aspita Samapatti that Patanjali has mentioned. And Vyasa tells us that it is a Jyotishmati Pravrutti in Aspita Samadhi. So that's how we can correlate what the Upanishads mention and what Patanjali has mentioned. Darshana Upanishad has two classes called Savishesha and Nirvishesha Dhyana. Savishesha Dhyana is, according to Darshana Upanishad, on Shiva Swarupam, the Saguna Rupam of Shivam, and Nirvishesha Dhyana is Amurta, unmanifest form of Shiva. So Murta Dhyana is Savishesha Dhyana, Amurta Dhyana is Nirvishesha Dhyana. This classification you get in Darshana Upanishad. In Gheranda Samhita, you get three types of dhyana, namely Sthula Dhyana, that is gross, Jyotistha Dhyana, that is on luminosity, and Sukshma Dhyana, that is subtle. So Sthula, Jyotistha and Sukshma are the three types which get mentioned in Gheranda Samhita. The Sthula Dhyana is on images, icons, figures of devatas. So it is Murti Pratima, Murti Dhyana, Pratima Dhyana, Murti of Devata, Pratima of Devata. The The Jyotishtha Dhyana, as described in Shastras, is Dhyana on Mooladhar Sthita Kundalini Shakti Dhyana. It is not on lamp, it is not on a wick of the lamp as nomenclature might suggest. So one should not confuse between the literal meaning of Jyotishtha Dhyana and technical meaning. Literally it would mean that you must have Dhyana object as a wick of a lamp, luminosity. But that is not the case. Technically, it is Mooladhar Sthita Kundalini Shakti Dhyana. The Sukshma Dhyana is Dhyana on Kundalini when it is aroused and when it is uniting with the Atma. So, this is little description of Desha bandha that Patanjali mentions. So, this Desha can be also external, such as the cognition of an image. It is not, Desha means body references necessarily, like Mooladhar Sthan, Swadhishthan Sthan, Manipuraka Sthan, Anahata Sthan, Vishuddhi Sthan, Agnya Sthan. It is not with reference to body. Desha has reference to these concepts, such as it can be Saguna Dhyana, Nirguna Dhyana, Savishesha Dhyana, Nirvishesha Dhyana, as we just now discussed. So, the Chitta getting arrested to those loci is Desha bandha. And of course, there is invariably Antarmukhi of yoga. All this is with Antarmukhi internalization of the mind. But Desha should not be only taken to be referring to Sharira Desha or Sharira Sthana, not a bodily location necessarily. If you look into Vijnana Bhikshu's commentary here, he says that this internalization takes exaltedly in some of the exalted locations such as heart. So he refers to heart etc. regions which are in the yogic tradition as the internal locations for dharana, dhyana, samadhi. They are prakrushta, utkrushta sthanas. They are exalted locations because the heart is one that you know where the Atma resides, where Paramatma resides, where Ishvara resides, where Atmeshwara Shakti comes together and where it manifests. So also in the Tantras, the Mooladhar location of the body is said to be Kama Pitha, passion zone. And that needs to be getting sublimated. So yoga makes that Kama Pitha sublime. And then it becomes Dhyana Ashraya. Then it becomes support of Dhyana. You should not be thinking of doing Dhyana on Mooladhar location. It first must be transfigured, transmuted, etherealized. Then it becomes fit to be locus of Dhyana. So Mooladhar is called Kama Pitha and then it is Dhyana Ashraya. It is support for Dhyana. The Anahata technically is called Purnagiri. Purnagiri means accomplished condition, accomplished heart, accomplished chitta. So there is Krutarthata, Dhanyata and Bhavanik Pavitrya. There is emotional purity and sanctity. And therefore that also becomes Dhyana Ashraya. So that is the Gangotri of purity, piety, sanctity. Anahata, that is Hridaya Sthanam. So the point is that the loci for dhyana is Mooladhara, Swadhisthana, Manipuraka, Anahata, Vishuddhi, Agnya. Only when they are transfigured, transmuted. So, for the process of dharana, dhyana, samadhi, as Patanjali mentions in this first chapter, there must be tanmayata, tasthata, tadanjanata. The chitta must get unified with the support. So, dheya tanmayata, not only tanmayata but tadakarata, tadanjanata, tadrupata, which Vyasa has described in Samapatti topic. So it is Samanakarapatti as Vyasa describes. So some of the predicates are to be reconsidered here and then understood in the light of what we are discussing now. So what is this Samanakarapatti? Say for instance, if the yogi is meditating on lotus, he doesn't only meditate on lotus, he becomes lotus. There is becoming. And the dharana, dhyana, samadhi process is becoming. It's not just trance. In trance you don't become. And therefore trance is not a proper translation of the word samadhi. Samapatti, Samanakarapatti are the precise statements or terminologies that you get in the science of yoga. So in samadhi, you get all dimensional realization of the object, which again technically described as ashesha, vishesha, nishesha, sarvayami. These are wonderful predicates that you get in the texts of yoga. Ashesha, vishesha, nishesha. Ashesha means nothing remaining, complete. Vishesha means particularized, special. Nishesha means absolutely complete. And sarvayami means all dimensional. Now this revelation cannot take place in the human brain, because we try to get fructification of our knowledge process in the brain, but the brain is not qualified for such ashesha, vishesha, nishesha, sarvayami sakshatkar. So what is this sarvayami? So for a common man to understand, we all know two-dimensional drawings and paintings. They are on a canvas, they are on a paper. The paper has a kind of size, length and width. On that paper, the artist draws some kind of flower or some kind of landscape. So that is two-dimensional. Photographs are two-dimensional. Then we know what is three-dimensional. Because when you see the photograph of a rose, you just see the two dimensions of it, the length of it and the width of it. But if you have the rose in your hand, you get the three-dimensional vision of it. Because you have the length and width and girth. So that is trimityatmaka, three-dimensional. So having a rose in the hand is three-dimensional experience. Looking at the picture of a rose, it is two-dimensional. And we are aware of these days three-dimensional movies and cinemas. And then we know they are close to reality. They are more realistic. So we know something as 3D. Of our generations, we know something as 3D. That is three dimensions. Now, we are also getting fourth dimension in our technology, which is a virtual reality. So, three-dimensional is realistic and fourth dimension is virtual reality. It also brings the time and space. What is this? Say, for instance, if you are watching a scene which is in Sahara Desert, you get the temperature feel of Sahara, which is 50 plus. So the theater would raise the temperature for you to feel 45 degrees, 48 degrees, dry, hot weather, or if it is suppose polar region, then the temperature would go to sub-zero, minus 35, minus 40. So that's the fourth dimension, that's the 4D picture. But here it is all dimensional. When yogi is getting rose in his samadhi, prajna, he knows the rose by becoming the rose. He becomes the rose, and then that is the knowledge of what we call as all dimensional. That means that rose at that moment is a flower. But from where has it come? It has come from plant. It has come from ground. It has come from sand. So it comes from sand and goes to sand. So it can become, the rose ultimately will become sand when it dries out and falls off and falls on the ground and then becomes sand after some weeks or months. Or the rose might go in a preparation called gulkand, a sweet preparation of rose petals. Or it can go into rose water. Or it can go into incense. So we know where the rose would be going, the probabilities. And we can also imagine from where the rose has come and where the rose is going. The yogi will realize all dimensional aspects here. He will know the rose coming from nominal plane, the entire journey from nominal plane that has taken place for it to become rose today, and the entire journey prospectively that the rose is going to dry out or fall off and dry out and go into some preparations or become sand. It doesn't stop there, it goes further until it again goes to nominal. So all dimensional mean nominal to nominal journey is included. That is sarvayami. So that is what happens in intuitive mystic process of samadhi. And the predicates such as tadakarata, tadrupata, tanmayata, tadakarapanna, samapanna, tasthata, tadanjanata, these are wonderful predicates which come to describe this unique aspect of samadhi. So if the samadhi is on, say, Sri Rama, he is not only becoming Sri Ramamaya, he becomes Sri Ramakara, Sri Rama Samapanna, Sri Ramakara, Sri Ramamaya, Sri Ramakara Panna, Sri Ramarupa Panna, Sri Rama Samapanna. This is what happened to Kabir, Tulsidas, Tyagaraj, Ramdas Swami, those who were devotees of Sri Rama. That was their becoming. And therefore in Vedanta you get the mention of Brahma Sakshatkara, where there is becoming. So let us suspend this matter where we have come to, that in Vedanta, the revelations, Tattvamasi, Aham Brahmasmi. So they understand all of these are Samadhi founded, Samadhi rooted, they engender from Samadhi. But anyway, let's try to take example of rose. which, as I said, retrospectively it is a long journey and prospectively it is a long journey. So let us try to take an account which will be quite amusing for us. So if it is all dimensional, the rose in all its earlier forms and latter forms are included in that sakshatkar. So let us try to understand the retrospective journey of rose, or its journey up to coming to a rose plane, rose phase, and after rose phase where it is going to go. So let's try to take an account of it, which will be amusing, interesting, mind-boggling as well. But we will do that in our next session. Namaskar all of you.